If you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of him, would you?
He's right there. Throw him out into the cold. Don't give him their coat.
They'll say, oh, the room had a picket.
Get him out. Get him out of here, folks.
Yeah, get him the hell out of here, will you, please? Throw him out. I will pay for the legal fees, I promise.
How are you representing our state? How can you represent our state?
When Republicans gather in Cleveland come July, it will be with perhaps the highest amount of angst, fear, and trepidation we have faced at a political convention since 1968. That's when the streets of Chicago ran red with blood as cops waded into protesters, started bashing heads. Some in the crowd pelted police with rocks and insults. And this just a sidelight to how credible journalists such as Dan Rather from CBS were roughed up as the world watched. Real journalists are used to covering civil unrest, dangerous situations, even battlegrounds overseas. But now they are being prepped for what could be a real war right here on American soil at the GOP convention. Our guest is Executive Director of the Global Journalist Society, also Senior Advisor for Journalist Security at the New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists. Welcome Frank Smyth to the Hard Line. Frank, I guess the first thing that comes to mind, and myself as a career journalist would have to ask you, why are we here? How did we get to this point?
Well, we started offering civil unrest training for journalists long before Donald Trump became the front runner for the Republican nomination for president, because of situations both overseas, places like Istanbul, as well as what we've seen in Ferguson, Baltimore, and elsewhere within the United States. But now there's a concern among journalists and news organizations about the specter for civil unrest and politically motivated violence, both potentially inside and especially outside the Quicken Loans venue in Cleveland, where the Republican National Convention will be held.
Let's make it very clear here. United Nations figures over the past decade, more than 700 journalists have been killed around the world during the course of discharging their simple duties of covering the news. That averages out to one death a week. Frank, this is stunning to people when you talk about Afghanistan, other places where we know there's civil violence, yet we're coming here to America where we're supposed to be protected. Aren't journalists and everybody supposed to have at least some sense of security in their own home?
Well, I don't think the situation in the United States is quite like it would be in a number of less developed nations. At least not at this point. I'm not seeing that. I think what we're seeing now is that there's a real possibility of violence at this convention. There's certainly the expectation of civil unrest. You have Mr. Trump, who's been inciting crowds to spew vitriol at specific journalists, including cameramen, whom he has derided for not panning the crowd to show how large his rallies are, when in fact that cameraman's job, it seemed, was to stay on the dais and stay with Mr. Trump. You've had Trump reporters also accosting both protesters and journalists who are covering the event. We've also seen a Secret Service officer who assaulted a journalist covering a Trump rally. We also have the specter of the expectation of anti-GOP protesters coming to Cleveland to protest against the convention. That could include anarchist groups that we've seen at past political rallies, and also Black Lives Matter, who have already protested Republican Party events as well as Democratic Party events.
Let me stop you one sec there, Frank, because I've only got a couple of minutes, but I want to bring up a point here. Is it not fair to say that while we do have people such as Donald Trump who have been aiming people at journalists in so many ways, what we have is a change here? There used to be legitimate journalists who would be looking for a story, but now you have web-based pseudo-journalists. You have people who claim they're journalists who are nothing more than clown car drivers, if you will, who aren't real journalists, and they bring people believe that they're all in one big lump here. So they believe that everybody acts as the same group. That injures the ability of the real journalists to do their job, yes?
To some degree, but I think also a journalist is defined by the act of disseminating information. So a citizen journalist who's disseminating information in a manner consistent with the principles of journalism in terms of verification.
But that's the point you just made there, the principles of journalism. Fair to say that we have a lot of people out there right now who call themselves journalists. They bring this upon themselves because they don't follow those tenets.
To some degree, but I think there's also a lot of vitriol against the mainstream press.
Okay.
People who just have animosity for those who reporting news in a manner that they disagree with. So I'm more concerned about the vitriol coming from political leaders against the press. People that are clearly there, that are clearly credentialed, that are there with camera crews, that are now the object of scorn from sizable numbers of people in the crowd. When you get that mob mentality and you have leaders like Mr. Trump encouraging that, that creates for a potentially dangerous situation.
I got about 60 seconds left. This is a 2-day course scheduled for early May with a price tag of about $1,200 or so. Are you getting a lot of people interested?
We're getting some people interested. We expect to fill the course before it occurs on May 9th and 10th. There's been interest for some time for civil unrest training in the United States. And this is a course which will include classroom presentation as well as studio exercises, and then we bring in professional actors to actually create scenarios for learning purposes. So it'll be, I think, quite interesting, and certainly there's interest. And there's interest from news organizations of all kinds and sizes.
20 seconds. Are you teaching them self-defense?
Self-defense in the terms of de-escalation. We're not teaching anyone how to strike out at anyone, and we think that would backfire, but how to de-escalate a situation, which really means how to stay calm when you're being accosted by hostile people around you.
Very, very smart. I can tell you, having been in this business my entire adult life, I know a lot of cameramen who I wouldn't want to mess with, because the minute you touch that camera, that becomes an entirely different situation. I've been there and I've seen it many times. Frank Smyth, we're going to follow up on this as we get close to Cleveland. Thanks for doing this, because quite frankly, it's definitely necessary. All the best. We'll talk to you again. Now, why would any major corporation slam down hard on a cash cow? They would when the leader has delusions of grandeur. Grist for the sports professor when we come back right here on The Hard Line.